There's a moment most leaders don't talk about it. It's not dramatic and nothing is visibly wrong, but something feels heavier than it should. You're still performing, the business is still moving, and the team is still functioning. But yet, somewhere along the way, leadership started to feel more tiring than you expected, even when things are going well. If you've ever quietly wondered, why does this feel harder than it should? Then this episode is for you. Welcome to the High Impact Leader Podcast, a leadership podcast for business owners and leaders who want self-managing teams, stronger accountability, and scalable performance without carrying everything themselves. If you're ready to focus on leadership design, not just effort, you're in the right place. So you've quietly wondered, or maybe loudly, that leadership feels harder than it should. Well, this feeling rarely announces itself clearly. It doesn't say, you're overloaded. It says something quieter. It says, everyone else seems to be coping, and maybe I'm just not built for this. You look around and you see other leaders. They're calm, they're decisive, and they appear to have a handle on the demands of business leadership. At least, that's how it looks from the outside. And because nothing is technically broken, you assume the problem must be internal, that it must be you. How does it show up internally? Well, you don't talk about it much, because saying it out loud feels risky. You worry it sounds like weakness, or a lack of resilience, or proof that you're not cut out for leadership. So instead, you just adjust. You carry more, you think more, and you stay closer to everything that affects your team performance. Not because you're trying to control, but because carrying it yourself feels safer than letting something else slip. And slowly, leadership becomes something you hold instead of something that holds you up. Here's what matters. This moment, where leadership feels heavier than expected, it's not a personal failure. It's not because you're less capable, and it's not because you're less resilient, and it's not because everyone else is coping better than you. Most leaders don't share this part. They share outcomes, they share decisions, and they share confidence. They don't share the internal load needed to sustain team engagement while keeping everything moving. When you compare your inside to someone else's outside, you reach the wrong conclusion, that it must be you. And then a deeper belief kicks in. If I were a good leader, I wouldn't feel this way. You start to tell yourself that capable leaders shouldn't feel stretched, that experienced leaders should have figured this out by now, and that discomfort must mean you're doing something wrong. So instead of questioning the structure around you, you start to question yourself. You assume the answer is more effort, more endurance, more personal capacity, and for a while, that works until it doesn't. And here's the quiet truth most leaders only realize later. Feeling like you're carrying more than you should is often a signal, not of a weakness, but of misalignment. Not misalignment with your role, but misalignment in how leadership responsibility is structured around you. You're not struggling because you're incapable. You're struggling because the system is leaning on you more than it should. And without noticing, you've become the place where weight collects. And this is where leadership design matters. Not as a solution yet, but as an explanation. Because when clarity, ownership, and accountability are under-designed, the load doesn't disappear. It travels upward. It lands with the leader who cares the most, the leader who's most capable, the leader who notices things early. Which is why leaders trying to build self-managing teams often feel the heaviest load first. Not because they're doing it wrong, but because they're carrying what hasn't been designed yet. So here's the only thing to consider today. Not what you should change and not what you should fix, just this. What are you carrying that no one ever explicitly asked you to carry, but you picked up because it felt necessary? And what would it mean if that weight wasn't a personal shortcoming, but a design signal pointing toward more scalable leadership? Again, you don't need to act on it yet, just notice it. And it's this moment, when leadership starts to feel heavier than it should, is something we spend a lot of time on inside the High Impact Leader Club. It's where leaders learn to design clarity, ownership, and accountability, so the load doesn't silently accumulate with them. If this episode felt familiar, you'll find the details in the show notes. Design your leadership, build your team, lead with impact.